Welcome back, everyone, to the online Graphs of Matroid seminar. Today, we're happy to have George Drummond talking about elastic elements and where to find them. So take it away, George.
Thank you, Zach. Firstly, thanks for the invitation to talk. Looking forward to it. So today we're going to talk about these things called elastic elements in three-connected matroids, and in particular, how to find them, how to go about our merry search and actually find these guys. And it turns out we can actually find them in spades, and we can entirely talk about where they occur. So it's actually quite neat, and it's quite clean. So hopefully it's a nice, easy afternoon for most of you and a morning for me. Very good. Right, so first off, just to ease us in, this is Matroid connectivity as cooked up by Tut. Nice little kind of generalization in many ways of graphic connectivity, but with some quirks, which we're going to focus on one of them. So here's the connectivity function as lambda, and as you all know and love, it kind of measures the nice rank of the subspaces between two kind of complementary sets. And so we call a partition of a ground set of a matroid K separating if this kind of connectivity is strictly less than K, so it's very less than K. For us, we're often going to care about K equals 3 and K equals 2. So I'm going to go into more detail into that in a moment. K separation is a K separating pair in which both sides have size at least K. We're going to care about particular 3 separations today. And a matroid is N connected if it has no K separations for all K strictly less than N. So for those, if there's anyone less familiar with all this stuff, today we're mostly just interested in 3 connectivity. So something is 3 connected if it's got no 1 separations or 2 separations. 1 separations, just these kind of skew subspaces, which you've got a picture on the left, and 2 separations, you kind of got these things meeting at a point, basically. So that's kind of our, as far as our preliminaries basically go, I think that's our connectivity. Now we're going to zoom in on this fact that because it's not precisely graphic connectivity, one of the quirks is that small circuits separate. So in the 3 connected case, little parallel elements, or indeed the dual notion of a series element, get in the way of something being 3 connected. So here you've got the graph on the left, it's nice and 3 connected, but in the matroidal sense, its cyclic matroid isn't 3 connected because it's got that little parallel pair there, which serves as a 2 separation. However, and then if we simplify that matroid, as that ergo we delete one of the elements of the parallel pair, we're back to something which is properly 3 connected. So there's a notion of something called internally 3 connected, and that's pretty much what we can talk about today, though I won't address it as such. And so instead, we're going to talk about things in terms of simplification and co-simplification, just the simplification in the middle. Right, so here's pretty much the crux of why we kind of are looking at these things. So we've got Bixby's lemma in 1982. The paper's called something like simple connectivity theorem. Yeah, it's called a simple theorem, 3 connectivity, and that it is. It's quite pleasant. If E is an element of a 3 connected matroid, M, then at least one of the simplification of its contraction, or dually, the co-simplification of its deletion is 3 connected. So we kind of do get to 3 connectivity with at least the deletion or the contraction after simplification or co-simplification. One of those will occur. So here's a little example of some matroid we cooked up, which is in the center. And to the right, you see if we kind of contract this element E, we get this rank 3 fellow, which after simplification is nice and 3 connected. And on the left, just to show you, they don't both have to be 3 connected. Let's go on the left after deletion, it actually produces a series pair. I'll highlight it here, sorry, series pair, which you'll have to contract an element of it to perform a co-simplification. Think about it being the dual notion of simplification. But that actually produces a parallel pair, which is breaking 3 connectivity again. So we've got this idea of Bixby that we get at least one of these 2 things. And today, we're going to think about elements which do both. So we call an element E of a 3-connected matroid M elastic if both the simplification after contraction of that element and the co-simplification after deletion are 3-connected. So here you've got a little picture of F7 and choosing the central element, or indeed any because of the automorphism group. If we contract, we get a line with parallel elements. So after simplification of that, we would just get U23, which is nice and 3-connected. And in the deletion case, we simply get the rank 3 wheel. So it turns out every element of F7 is elastic, and that's it kind of easy enough to believe because it's nice and small. And it turns out if something is, well, it's immediately obvious actually, if something's rank 3, this the contractible one always holds. The simplification of the contraction is 3-connected because you basically put yourself onto a line. It just goes nicely like that. So actually, this is an extra bit of verbal terminology I'll use, which I haven't written down here, is I'll call something contractible. The simplification of its contraction is 3-connected, and I'll call something deletable if the co-simplification after deletion is 3-connected. So I'll maybe remind you of that in a moment, but that I will use those terms for, on occasion. All right, and our question is when can we guarantee them? And perhaps perhaps a better way of phrasing that might be, when can we not guarantee them? What are the obstructions to elastic elements occurring? And so as soon as we're talking about obstructions and finding elements, we turn to the Holy Grail, which gets a nice shout out here on my slide, which is the Wheels and Wells and Splitter theorems. First, of course, being Tutt's Wheels and Wells theorem, that if M is a 3-connected matroid other than a wheel or a whirl, then M has an element such that its deletion or contraction is 3-connected. Okay, nice. That's a nice little guarantee of this 3-connectivity, strict 3-connectivity, nothing fancy going on. And that was expanded by Seymour, who got us a nice result when we get to keep a specified minor, and which we have N is the specified 3-connected minor of M, and if N, November, excuse my Kiwi lilt, that's probably making M's and N's sound the same. If N is neither a wheel nor a whirl, then M, Mike, has an element E such that at least one of M delete E or M contract E is 3-connected and has our nice N as a minor. So we are going to cook up a Wheels and Wells theorem and a Splitter theorem for elastic elements. Right, first off, we get this nice familiar obstruction straight off the bat, because actually Wheels and Wells are an obstruction to elastic elements. Here, you've just got a graphic picture of a wheel to demonstrate. But if you look at this S fella, S for spoke, its contraction kind of pulls in some elements into parallel, and you've got to delete those to simplify, but then you've produced a series pair. So the spoke elements are not contractible. And if you look at R for rim, I've written S here, but that should be an R. If we delete R and then co-simplify, we produce a parallel pair. So we break 3-connectivity again. We're going to break 3-connectivity in more interesting ways later on, but this is enough to show you that wheels and whirls are very much completely obstructions to elastic elements. They have none. In particular, it's because everything's a fan. So to remind you what a fan is, it's this ordering of elements such that it alternates between triangles and triads in triples. So you get the first 3 elements are a triangle, and then the second 3 starting from the second index as a triad, and so forth. And a wheel or a whirl is actually just a fan wrapped in on itself. So it turns out, after some fairly quick looking at things, that fans, yeah, they're always obstructions to elastic elements. Oh, you can get elastic elements, but you can certainly not. So the ends of a 4-element fan are always non-elastic. And we're going to talk about some terminology as to why this is in a moment, but you can probably see some of these as to why they're non-elastic. The internal elements, that is, in a 4-element fan, that's the second and third element in the ordering. They can be elastic and they may not be. So if you look at these fellows here, in M1 and M2, these internal elements actually aren't elastic. Think about the deletion of F2, then you'd have to contract 3, you'd end up with a parallel pair. And after its contraction, you'd end up with a parallel pair also. Sorry, this dotted line is here. That's a dependency between F2, F4, and this dot. Over here, they're not quite orientated in that way. So actually, they produce elastic. They are elastic in this case, F2 and F3. So in this one, maybe in this one in the middle, it's a good way to think about it is it's actually a part of a larger fan. So F2 is actually a fan end in this instance. That might be a way of seeing why that's not elastic. But it doesn't have to be part of a larger fan, as we see on the left here. So there's still, F3 is still, I think I've labeled these F2 and F3 and I've swapped it for some reason. But F3 here is still non-elastic because after its contraction, the F4 point gets pushed down here, F2 gets put here and then deleted subsequently after the simplification. And we actually get this kind of subspace meeting at a point, right, which is our R2 separation. Yeah. So there is a horrible big characterization of when fans are elastic. It's not that horrible, not that big. But I thought I'd spare you it this morning, and we'll just say to ourselves, yeah, okay, fans, they can definitely have non-elastic elements. Right, here's our tempting idea 1. Given the 3-connected Matroid with no 4-element fans, can we guarantee elastic elements? Are they going to be some? Well, herein lies the rub, I suppose, because we thought this for some time. We thought we'd cooked up as to why it was as well. But the universe was not quite that pleasant. So there is something else lurking in the shadows. And we're going to cook up what that is now. But before we do, I'm finally going to actually talk about some terms because I cheekily didn't before, so I could talk about fans. Just get you interested because fans are so cool. Right, so for us, we're going to call a partition X and an element E and set Y a vertical 3 separation. This is for us today. We're going to call that a vertical 3 separation. If the element E is in the closure of both X and Y, so it's on the guts of the separation, X union E and Y union E are 3 separating, and X and Y both have rank at least 3. So for those very familiar with these things, this is basically the kind of non-trivial 3 separations. That's a trivial. Well, they're the 3 separations in which one side isn't a line, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And the dual notion, that is in the dual of M, we would call this structure of cyclic 3 separations. So you could write down the definition for yourself. That's something it would be, the element E would be in the co-closure of both sets. Sets both 3 separating and their co-ranks are both at least 3 of X and Y. And here's a nice little picture for you because pictures are neat. So you've got E in the co-guts, and the guts rather, and E in the co-guts over here. So these lines are always going to be sitting in it's kind of what the intersection of 3 separating sets look like. Here's a co-guts element there. So I'm going to mention these a lot. So I thought I'd have a dedicated slide for them. Right, the important thing for us is having vertical and cyclic separations is exactly what it is to not be contractible or deletable. So I'll talk about the condensed version. I've written the full lemma here above, but if an element is not contractible, that is, if the simplification after contraction is not 3 connected, that's if and only if there is a vertical 3 separation with the element in the guts. Dually, if an element is not deletable, if and only if there is a cyclic 3 separation with that element in the co-guts. Yeah. So this is precisely what it means to be deletable or contractible, is to not have these guys, these separations. Right. So I was talking about how these were kind of non-trivial separations. This is kind of the trivial case, which it turns out has a sneaky thing hiding in there, which caused grief and we didn't see. So a subset of M is a segment of M if, after restricting to it, you have the rank 2 uniform matroid of at least 3 elements. And in 3 connected matroids, of sufficient size at least 4, this basically is the property of having rank 2. And for some reason, they're called segments and not lines. I'd be interested to, as somebody probably knows in the audience, as to why that is, how that evolved. But the neat thing about them, we can immediately say, is every element is deletable. And in fact, there's a stronger property that it's kind of strictly deletable. M delete E is 3 connected, no co-simplification needed. So we have that straight off the bat. The rub lies in its contraction. And here's the horrible kind of picture and leather. So it turns out, we're looking at these lines, these segments, and every element is deletable. But when are the elements contractible? We thought we had a nice little lemma for this, but there was a sneaky thing came up. So here's the real deal. If M is a 3 connected matroid, and you've got your segment going on, and there's some other element in its co-closure to form a rank 3 co-circuit. Right, that's all just stuff to set up a lemma. If Y1 and Y2 are not contractible, that is the simplification after contraction are not 3 connected in both cases, so you're going to have some vertical 3 separation floating around, then there must be 2 other distinct elements, W1, W2, such that the closure of that segment, so the kind of entire segment as it were, minus Yi union Wi, so here's the I equals 1 case, I suppose, is a co-circuit, a rank 3 co-circuit, and for each I. This is precisely what it is to not be contractible on a segment. And here's where the cool where the structure arises, because you might start to see what would happen if we started to declare that all of these segment elements are not contractible. We'd get a bunch of these elements, these W's, forming a lot of co-circuits. And it turns out that they would have to, we can use closure arguments to see that those W's are going to end up forming a co-segment. That is a segment in the dual. So what is a big old line and a big old co-line, as it were, a big old co-segment? It's this funky thing called a theta matroid. So here's it's quite a monstrous slide, I suppose, but here is our theta matroids. Once you understand fans and you understand theta matroids, you basically understand the things that are going to cause elastic elements. So theta matroids are the matroids on set W and Z. W is a segment. W is a segment, so it's a line. So here's that is condition I. All 3 element subsets of W are circuits. Second set of circuits are the sets that form the whole Z set minus a Z union its corresponding W. So you get these kind of, so here's the rank 3 case, you'd have Z minus Z1 as these 2 elements here, and there's the corresponding one. So you get these little sets poke out. And then the other ones are just happen to make the matroid axioms work, which is Z minus Zi union the other 2 as well. So in the rank 3 case, Z2, Z3, W3, ends up being a nice 4 circuit. And then this holds for higher rank. Obviously, they get a bit fiddly to draw after rank 4. But here's my kind of horrible attempt at drawing what the kind of rank 4 one looked like after deleting a W element. James, can I pick up the Joe commissioned him? And we denote a single segment element deletion, of which, because of all the symmetry, it's unique up to isomorphism. We denote that as theta n minus. So theta n is the rank n theta matroid. Theta n minus is the matroid you get after deleting one of these W's, one of these guys over here. So theta 3 minus ends up, picking up like a little fan guy. So the reason why we allow for this minus thing will become clear when I show you the next couple of slides. And it's basically in the where the elastic elements are going to occur. These are the 2 cases that are going to cause grief. Right, but this thing, not just that matroid, but restrictions of that matroid might be around, right? And that thing is also going to cause grief. So a set S, which is it's the disjoint union of W and Z, is called a theta separator. That's our kind of term, our theta separator of M if, this is a weird little condition to get rid of degeneracy, the rank of M and the co-rank of M is at least 4. And the rank of W and the co-rank of Z is 2. That's just saying that W is a segment and Z is a co-segment. And this is for duality reasons, either the restriction to S or in M, or the restriction to S in the dual is isomorphic to one of our thetas, or our theta M minuses. That's the theta delete a W element. I kind of informally call this like a weak theta separator if it's theta N minus, and for reasons that you'll probably see in a moment. Whereas I kind of call these strong if it's isomorphic to the whole theta matrix. Right, so here's our picture which we can draw. I know, look, it's got fans in it again, but that's only because rank 4 theta separators are fiddly to draw in other Matroids. So here's our rank 3 theta separator stuck onto it to make a rank 4 Matroid in general. Now you might be thinking to yourself, all right, so I can see why the W's are not contractible, because these Z's are basically corresponding to that lemma of when something isn't contractible. And it turns out the Z's also are not deletable. I've got this nice little picture to kind of emphasize that. Well, you can see here, Z1, delete Z1. We've now produced a series pair. You'd have to contract Z2, so you'd end up with a parallel pair, yeah? And non-trivial separations occur at higher ranks. So I've just got a little kind of schematic picture of that here, just to remind us. So here's my kind of horrible picture of a rank 4 theta separator glued onto an arbitrary kind of matroid down here. So Z1, you see that actually it is sitting in the coguts of cyclic separation. And that cyclic separation, one side is one of those circuits we were talking about, which is everything minus Z1 union the corresponding W element. And those precisely are small sides of cyclic separations. So that forces the Z1s to be not deletable. Now, hopefully that makes some sort of sense. It's this kind of the crux of understanding why these kind of don't work. So yeah, the Zs are not deletable. They are contractible because the dual notion of that observation we made, that lines, you can delete elements from lines. Dual notion is you contract elements from co-segments, and that's fine. So it's the non-deletability that stops these being elastic, the Zs, and it's the non-contractibility stops Ws from being elastic. The reason why it's the weak notion, if we were to delete W1, the fact that this was a cyclic separation with respect to Z1 kind of collapses, and Z1 would actually become elastic if W1 were to be deleted. Well, I think that one can take a bit to sink in and think about, but that's definitely the case. So we do have this, if we delete elements in W, we create, or rather force elements in Z to become elastic. Yeah, that's a neat little trick you can do. The only thing making Z1 not deletable really is this W sitting there. Right, so why that would kind of allow for one elastic element? Well, oh, hello. What we're going to look at now is a maximal vertical 3 separation. It's a bit of technical detail, but I think it's quite handy into, this is really how one spots elastic elements. So if you follow this, you can find them wherever you want, really. We're about to get to our wheels and wells theorem, I promise. But this is the technical detail which you're going to want to know because it makes everything make sense. So if you've got a vertical 3 separation, which I've kind of drawn as this box thing for some reason, we call one side Y union E maximal if there's no other vertical 3 separation such that a Y dash union E properly contains Y union E. I may have said that poorly, so I'll probably say it again. So a vertical 3 separation, we can call one side maximal if there's no other vertical 3 separation whose side could contain our side, which we've called maximal. So it's as large as possible. There's nothing hiding up here in the small side, which is also a side of a vertical 3 separation. So yeah, we're going to see some pictures of what these are, but if we kind of think about our examples we know, this is the kind of stuff which goes on, right? If we look at a 4-element fan, the fan itself is the small side, as it were, the non-maximal side of a vertical 3 separation with one side maximal. There is nothing hiding in the small side. We can't properly contain this Y union F1. So that's okay, that's a little observation. So they're kind of at the periphery, as it were, when considering vertical 3 separations. All right, funnily enough, absolutely no prizes for guessing this one. Another thing which crops up if you look at maximal 3 separations is theta separators. So here's my horrible trademarked picture of roughly what's going on here. If you have, this is say Y union W1, sorry, I haven't placed it on the absolute right of the page, W1, but this is looking at kind of Y union W1. We have, so the elements W are the segment elements, the co-segment elements are Z. Now, Z minus Z1, as it were, this union W1, these circuits which I keep talking about, particular kind of circuits which do interesting things in theta separators. This is one side of a maximal vertical 3 separation again. So it can occur. So you've got W1 kind of in the closure here, and that's got rank at least 3. It's also there, but you can't go any further. I mean, in particular, there's no circuits hiding in there if you try to go any further. So you can probably see as to why that is. I'll actually give a pretty good moment for that to sink in, actually, because this is a bit of a weird one. What we did is, in the paper was we kind of explicitly describe what it means for a side of a maximal 3 separation to be in these theta separators, and it's pretty well behaved. So you do get this. So these obstructions we cared about, these 4-element fans and our theta separators, always occur up here. So a natural thing would be, let's look up here and see what happens. These special cases aren't there. And just a little plug for crossing, because I'm going to say the word crossing once or twice. If you've got two kind of 3 separations going on, Y and X, and they intersect at least 2 elements, turns out that they're, and I suppose their union avoids 2 elements. It turns out their union is also 3 separating. All I mean by this is that it's just a kind of slight insight into how we actually go about proving these things as we look at lots of different vertical and cyclic 3 separations. And if they intersect in certain ways, we can then consider their union. I'm not spending too much time on this, but I thought I'd best just put it up to remind people that separations do cross. Maybe not everyone plays with these all the time. So yeah, if X and Y were 3 separating sets and they met at least 2 elements, then their union, would be 3 separating. And we use that tool a bit. I'm not going to impose a horrible proof on you guys. I'm sure. Tell you that's kind of there in the background. Right. So roughly what we do kind of do is, all right. So we've got this. If we're not having if elastic elements aren't happening nicely, well, something isn't contractible up to duality, right? We shift to M or M star. We have this element which isn't contractible. Well, that is having a vertical 3 separation, right? So this pops up. And then effectively what you can start to look at is, all right, let's have a look at X, yeah? I mean, if anything's elastic, hey, we win. If not, you get more separations, right? Either vertical or cyclic. And then they cross the first guy. So you can start looking at unions of things. I have a tendency to get excited and carried away, so I'm slowing down sometimes. But if Y union E was maximal, then by doing this crossing, when we start getting little 3 separating sets up here in these quadrants, then they're not going to be vertical ones because of our maximality, the maximality of this big blob down here. These little guys can't be sides of vertical ones. And what that forces is segments, is the kind of the trivial 3 separations, as it were, that we were talking about before. So it forces segments to occur. They occur here, they occur over here, or co-segments and things like that. So understanding segments and elastic elements in segments kicks in. And then I'm not going to impose the horrible details on you because it's some kind of just pages of playing around and and just doing mad things with these. But one eventually cooks up this fella. If M is a 3-connected matroid with a vertical 3 separation, such that Y union E is maximal. If X union E, non-maximal side, is not a 4-element fan, and X is not contained in a theta separator, then at least 2 elements of X are elastic. Yes. We're a fan of that. So they are hiding up here. Elastic elements are hiding in the non-maximal sides of maximal vertical 3 separations, or dually cyclic 3 separations. So that's where they're hiding. And that is basically the absolute crux of the next result, which is our Wills and Wells theorem. So one more time, because I said a few times, is that elastic elements are hiding in these small sides of vertical 3 separations. That gives us this. If M is a 3-connected matroid, and then at least 7 elements thing, if M has at least, then M has at least 4 elastic elements. There will be at least 4, which is a good amount, provided M has no 4-element fans and no theta separators. And then this other thing about if it's got almost 6 elements, then every element is elastic. So that you can probably cook up your own 2-line proof as to why that is based off the previous result, right? If you don't have any elastic elements, you're going to have a vertical 3 separation or cyclic up to duality. Then you just push one direction and you find the 2, and you push the other direction and you find the 2. Turns out this 4 is as good as possible as well. So we've guaranteed at least 4 elastic elements, and actually we can do no better, right? There's not always 5 or 6 or something. I think I have an example as to those later on in the slides, but you can probably try to cook up your own, thinking about you can basically start with 2 theta-like things, glue them together, and then start deleting elements across their shared segment, and you'd create the elastic elements that you were looking for. That would be one little example I could give you. So that's our Wills and Wells theorem. We get at least 4, which is quite a few. It's quite neat. Now, let's do the big boy stuff. So if N is a 3-connected minor of M, we want to keep it. So we call an element N elastic if both the simplification of M trig D and the co-simplification of M delete E are 3-connected and have a minor isomorphic to M. N elastic. So kind of empty matroid elastic is being elastic, as it were. Yeah. So this is what it is to be N elastic. So F7 again, if you want, that's every element is U2-3 elastic, because it's simplification of its contraction and deletion both have U2-3 as a minor and are 3-connected. But we do mention a little quirk that, I mean, neither of them is MK4 elastic. They're not MK4 elastic, because even though the deletion, the co-simplification deletion has an MK4, this is the rank 3 wheel, sorry, MK4 minor, its contraction is too small. So you get this weird little trivial stuff. You get this quirky exceptional stuff which happens at rank 3 and co-rank 3 and things like that. But we move away from that world with our co-rank at least 4 requirements. So it's no real big bother. But that is something to have in mind. How many inelastic elements can we find, right? So off the top of our head, we'd think, hey, maybe, you know, we've got 4 elastic elements. We can use them to hopefully get some inelastic ones. And it turns out we can. But first off, another term, an element E is N-revealing, all these lovely terms. If either the simplification of its contraction, which you're familiar with now, or the co-simplification of its deletion has an N minor, tick, but is not 3-connected, cross, right? So being N-revealing is a certificate to be not N-elastic. Yeah, you're getting there because you've got the minor, but you're not 3-connected after the contraction or the deletion. That's what it is to be N-revealing. Yeah. So if you had no N, I'll talk about that in a moment. If you had no N-revealing elements, you're in anyway. A theta separator W union Z, W being the segment elements as always, and Z being the co-segment elements, reveals N if after restricting to M, you're the theta matroid you expect to be, and at least one element of the co-segment elements is n revealing. That's a lot of words. So what does that mean? It kind of means that, if you look down here, the Z1 would be F7 revealing. Yeah, because if you delete it, its co-simplification of its deletion is not 3 connected, but it does have an F7 minor. So it's F7 revealing, yeah? And as soon as Z1 is, then we call the whole theta separator F7 revealing in this case. That one's a bit fiddly to immediately think about, but that's what it is. So it's these kind of certificates of not working nicely with respect to elasticity. That is basically all you need to know, other than this funky little result, which I don't know about putting in, but it's a lot of words. So there's the garbage amount of words. Informally, it would be that if you have a vertical 3 separation and you've got your minor on one side, that is M contract T has the N minor, and you look at your small side, so you close Y union E, and you look at the other side, then most of the elements have both M contract E and M contract X rather, and M delete X have the N minor. So basically, if your guts element sitting in a vertical 3 separation, you close one side, and the other side, the small one, is every element's going to be kind of X flexible. There's a number of words for those. It has both M delete X and M contract X have N minors. There's a little exception. Apparently, well, not apparently, but certainly there is one element can pop up that doesn't have M delete X dash has the N minor, but that's very nicely behaved. It's going to be in the co-closure of this 3 separating set, and everything in X other than that element is going to be in the closure of that set. So you very much have a lot of N minors going on in this smaller side, this non-closed side. And that, after a fairly small amount of hullabaloo, when combined with our knowledge of elastic elements and vertical 3 separations, gets you our splitter theorem. So, this is actually the precursor to our splitter theorem. So if you've got a vertical 3 separation, such that M contract T has the N minor, it goes on one side mostly, and you take a maximal vertical 3 separation containing Y union E, then the small side contains at least 2 N-elastic elements, unless we're in the familiar situation of being a 4-element fan or contained in a theta separator revealing N. So this is the N analog of that vertical lemma we were talking about in the wheels on wells. Neat, right? And doesn't take too much work after the initial theorem. So this has fallen out. We just apply it. This only takes a couple of lines. There's a little bit of quirky stuff I think that happens, but we get this, which is our splitter theorem. M is a 3-connected matroid, no fans, and N is a 3-connected minor of M, such that M has no theta separators revealing N. There's our N revealing theta separators out of the way. Then, if M has at least one N revealing element, then M has at least 2 N elastic elements. All right, now this little if M has at least one N revealing element, it's no big deal. If M has no N revealing element, then the simplification, the contractions, having an N minor means you're 3 connected and you're in happy anyway. So this is no big deal asking for at least one N revealing element. Yeah. Right. So that was our wheels and wells and splitter theorems. I'm going to quickly, briefly, just for completion's sake, mention that we did figure out what happens if you have. So we've guaranteed at least 4 elastic elements, at least 2 N-elastic elements, and we went, hey, what happens if those bounds are met? What happens if you have exactly 4 elastic elements or exactly 2? So this notion, sequentially 3 separating set, means you can order the ground set such that it's always every kind of, it's sequentially 3 separating for all indices, and the matroid itself we call path width 3 if its ground set is sequentially 3 separating. Just a little thing for those who are interested in these next two results, I'm not going to spend too much time on them. But you do get, if M is a 3-connected matroid with no filament fans or theta separators, if M has exactly 4 elastic elements, then M has path width 3. So for those who are familiar with the notion, that's really well behaved. It's nice, and it's just a whole bunch of 3 separating business. It's quite nice. And that's basically achieved by a number of crossings and using our nice vertical 3 separation lemma. So we can have exactly 4, and if we do, we've got path width 3. So a lot in the non-interesting case, we're often going to have more than 4, which is nice to know. Sorry, in the non-trivial case. And then we have the kind of n-elastic one. This is a bit more of a mouthful. That's why I'm not going to, it's just for those who can comprehend at the speed of light what's going on. If M is a 3-connected matroid with no 4-element fans, and N is a 3-connected minor of M, and N's large enough, M has no theta separators revealing N. If K is the set of N revealing elements, remembering what that is, they're the certificates for being non-elastic. Then if M has exactly 2 n-elastic elements, which we call S1, S2, then this K set union S1, S2, and the rest is a sequential 3 separation. So there'd be an ordering of the K set and your S1s and your S2s, such that if you move along, it's always 3 separating. So the certificate bit is very nicely behaved. Now, these may look a bit innocuous and kind of, why'd you bother to do that? It turns out they make proving some results really easy, which is quite neat. And this goes into what passes as an application of these results. So we've got this notion, which I mean, is a talk in itself, really, but if M is a matroid with a basis B, then element E of M is removable with respect to B, more words, I know. If E is in the basis and it's contractible, using my terminology, or E is not in the basis and E is deletable. All right, it's handy for representations of matrices, and you want to kind of, that's why you delete things. It doesn't mess with the representation too much. So it's a thing which people might want. And indeed, Whittle and Williams did look at this, and they guarantee at least 4 of them if you don't have 4-element fans. And if you have exactly 4 of them, then you've got path width 3. It turns out, and if you think, people thinking about our Wheels on Wells results can probably see that actually this falls out fairly nicely from that. This is a corollary of our Wheels on Wells result after thinking about how theta separators must work. But theta separators are no big deal with removable elements because all the segment elements are deletable and all the cosegment elements are contractible. And bases have to meet segment cosegments in a large way. So it's quite smooth. It falls out quite smoothly. And they asked in that paper, this is a bit more original as it were, can every basis have exactly 4 removable elements? Fair enough, because you're guaranteed at least 4. Can every basis have exactly 4? We're going to use elastic elements to quickly punch through that. Here's our proposition. If M is a 3-connected matroid with no 4-element bands, and it has at least 4 elements, then there exists a basis such that M has at least 5 removable elements with respect to B. And so in these last few minutes of our talk, I will briefly do the sketch proof, I suppose, or verbally. We've got no 4-element fans. If we have a theta separator, you're guaranteed this. You look around at the segment elements and the cosegment elements and where the basis moved it, and you get a lot of contractible or deletable elements, as I was saying before. In particular, you get at least 5. Otherwise, you've got no theta separators. Then you're guaranteed 4 elastic elements, at least 4, yeah? But elastic elements are removable with respect to any old basis, right? If they're in the basis, then they're contractible, and if they're outside the basis, then they're deletable. So yeah, they're definitely removable with respect to B. So you've got these elements which are champing at the bit, and they're all removable with respect to B. So all we need is to find a basis that has a 5th removable element. Let's have a look at any old element which isn't our elastic elements. Think about Bixby. It's either contractible or deletable. And because M is 3 connected with sufficiently many elements, there are no co-loops or loops. So E is in at least one basis and avoids at least one basis. And as soon as you are that, we have a basis with which E is removable. So E is removable with respect to at least one basis, and all these blue guys are definitely removable with respect to B as well. So we get at least 5. One could probably refine this result and look into these problems a bit more, but this is what we can immediately kind of see just using our elastic elements. It just kind of plows straight in there, and it's actually quite straightforward. So they're quite handy. So this was initially a problem kind of up to duality, but by having these elements that do both at once, we can kind of plow through these things. So it's quite neat. That's a neat little application, I thought. Just briefly mention, there is the kind of N analog of this as well. You've got the terms. Element E is NB robust if you're in the basis and your contraction has an N minor, or if you're outside the basis and your deletion has the N minor, and your NB strong. You guys got a good amount of terms today. If E is in the basis and simplification of the contraction is 3 connected with an N minor, or if E is outside the basis and the co-simplification of deletion is 3 connected with an N minor. A lot of terms, basically removable while keeping the N minor. Turns out you get, if you have at least 2 distinct NB robust, that's just a term to have the N minors, then at least 2 of them have this strong property. If one thinks about our splitter theorem, you can see this actually comes out of N elastic elements quite cleanly and nicely, and a consideration of theta separators again. But theta separators are not tricky things to analyze. They're a segment and a cosegment. Right. I have this last word slide to convince me to shut up soon. So these are some observations I made this week just to reach peak excitement for you guys. So if E is an elastic element and neither M delete E or M contract E is 3 connected, E must actually be an internal element of a 4-element fan. Think about that. If your contraction is if your simplification of your contraction is 3 connected, but just the contraction wasn't, E must have been in a segment. You might want to think about that, but it has to be in a segment. And the dual case for deletion, if you're in a segment and a co-segment, this ends up happening. Yeah. So a little kind of corollary of our work, if M is a 3 connected matrix with no 4-element bands and no theta separators, that's got at least 4 elements, then it has at least 4 elements E such that either this pair, contract E and co-simplification of M delete E, or this pair, M delete E and simplification of M contract E are 3 connected. Just a little kind of slight strengthening, I suppose, of our wills and wells that just immediately kind of happens. And we have the analogous one for inelastic things. So I thought that I just saw that this week, and I thought, yeah, that's pretty neat. So actually, even though we're talking about elastic stuff, if we live in no 4-element fan world, it's a wonderful world to live in. It is actually it's a stronger property. That's much stronger. It's equivalent, of course, but yeah, we do actually have this. And in this vein, I've said many times, theta separators are not a problem. And one element of pleasant behavior that they don't prevent are these things here. So this is in the same vein. So if M is a 3 connected matrix with no from fans, then M has at least 4 elements E such that at least one of M contract E or M delete E is 3 connected. This might be independently easy to prove. I just spotted this only in the last couple of days. That's a thing I could probably mention. And you get the analogous N revealing result here. So it might be an interesting problem to see if this is tight and if you can push these elements up or down and how many of these you might actually be able to get, or indeed if that analogous wills and Wilson splitter theorems already exist, which they may well. No, somebody may well enlighten me in a moment. So I suppose this elastic element stuff's actually, it's pretty neat. It certainly captured me. It's quite a quirky property, and it moves you up into thinking about this barrier, which we're always trying to kind of push between 3 connectivity and 4 connectivity. So I'd say ultimately it's yet another way of kind of pushing out and seeing what bit of a matroid is close to being 4 connected. So for those eagle-eyed, you'd have probably already realized that if you're 4 connected, everything's elastic. So this is looking at the boundary between 3 and 4. Yeah, that's us. And the sun has risen for me. How about that?
Okay. So on the count of three, let's all unmute and give George a round of applause. 1, 2, 3. And are there any questions for George?
I can give you the history of why the thing is called a segment.
Oh, yes, I thought you might, James. Yep.
Yeah, and that's just because it's a section of, I mean, it's part of a line.
Ah, of course.
See, the point about a line is that one uses the term line as being basically a rank 2 flat.
So it's the fact that it's a flat as opposed to a, yeah.
Yes. So
Right.
a segment was a sort of a portion of a line, and it didn't have to be the whole line. And the segment cosegment exchange, which the theta thing
Does. Yeah.
does, you don't have to use the whole line. You can use a portion of it.
True.
So that's going to be in Charles's PhD thesis, I think. Segment cosegment exchange.
Yes, yeah, I've read that paper. It's pretty neat. And actually, it's a thing I didn't mention in the talk, but because of segment cosegment exchange, it gives you a nice idea as to why theta separators aren't a big deal. So they don't occur in, I don't know, excluded minors for GFQ, because that's closed under segment cosegment exchange. So if you just did that exchange, you'd end up with a bunch of parallel elements. Breaking through connectivity, and those things are three connected, and yeah, there's probably other ways of seeing why they're not in GFQ excluded minors, but yeah, they're certainly not there. They're really easy to handle. They happen to be an exception to elastic elements, but they're very pleasant. So that's why you can kind of push through these theorems. Yeah. Is there any term I didn't? Sorry, James.
Is there anything more that you can do with this stuff?
I'm fascinated to see. One question I've thought of is we haven't actually explicitly said, you know, what is the is there a nice clean way of saying these are the matroids with no elastic elements, because they're going to have lots of theta, they're going to be glued together, theta separators and fans. But I don't know if that's like if they just sit on the extremities or whether it's everywhere, you know. I just haven't actually looked at it. So what is it to have no elastic element? When can we guarantee kind of some, but one, you know? Yeah. It probably is just a way of gluing together theta separators and fans. If anyone's keen on that, give me a bell. Maybe we'll look into that. Yeah. But that's these segments with cosegment elements kind of hanging on top of them is a very natural kind of way to look at it. So you can cook things up with arbitrary many elastic elements by just kind of removing elements from it. Have kind of start with a theta and then kind of just delete elements from the segment, and you will be producing elastic elements up here. Yeah. Yeah. I suppose I also wondered, yeah, if you remove, so this is something which is deletable and contractible. I was wondering if we can move away at all from the simplification thing, but it just ends up basically being when do you not have triangles and triads, which is that's just kind of, yeah, handled anyway. Yeah. So it's interesting. It feels fairly closed, cleanly kind of done as it is. It feels like the picture is fairly clear, but I think I would be keen to find out what are the matroids with no elastic elements. So what is the kind of clean characterization of that? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
is there anything I didn't explain well in there? Because I know I kind of brushed over some stuff because it's a Matroid Union blog talk. So if there's anything that's outstanding or...
It was okay for me, but I'm not sure about the other people.
Yeah, my apologies if anyone didn't exactly follow that. But the papers are available. Yeah, it's quite a neat, it's quite a clean thing actually. It's quite a clean exercise once you walk through it. It's quite a neat result. The universe behaves quite cleanly for it. So it interested me.
Are there any other questions for George? Okay. I'll stop the recording and we can continue the discussion off the air.